विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति।
कर्मजं बुद्धियुक्ता हि पदं त्यक्त्वा मनीषिणः जन्मबन्धविनिर्मुक्ताः पदं गच्छन्त्यनामयम्। यदा ते मोहकलिलं बुद्धिर्व्यतितरिष्यति तदा गन्तासि निर्वेदम्। श्रोतव्यस्य श्रुतस्य च श्रुतिभिः प्रतिपन्ना ते। यदा स्थास्यति निश्चला समाधावचला बुद्धिः तदा योगमवाप्स्यसि। अर्जुन उवाच स्थितप्रज्ञस्य का भाषा समाधिस्तस्य केशव। स्थितधीतिं प्रभाषेत किमासीत व्रजेत किम्। श्रीभगवानुवाच प्रजहाति यदा कामान् सर्वान् पार्थमनोगतान् आत्मन्येवात्मना तुष्टः स्थितप्रज्ञस्तदोच्यते। दुःखेष्वनुद्विग्नमनाः सुखेषु विगतस्पृहः वीतरागभयक्रोधः स्थितधीर्मुनिरुच्यते। यत्सर्वत्राणविस्नेहः तत्तत्राप्य शुभाशुभम् नाभिनन्दति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता। यदा संहरते चायम् कूर्मोऽङ्गानीव सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता। विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः। रसवर्जं रसोऽप्यस्य परं दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते। यततो ह्यपि कौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चितः इन्द्रियाणि प्रमादीनि हरन्ति प्रथमं मनः।
Rejoicing in action is yoga. Equilibrium is yoga. Samatvam is yoga. Karmasu kaushalam is yoga. So, samatvam is the state of equanimity, equilibrium. Karmasu kaushalam is the state where you are rejoicing, enjoying action. When both are happening, you are practicing yoga. Yoga is a longing. Yoga is the pain of separation, the distance. It's like the separation of the lovers. The distance is causing pain. And somehow they want to unite. That longing is what brings yoga. Don't take it literally, it is sensual there. That longing is what you need to, the distance, the separation is causing pain. It's causing pain, it's causing agony. So they want to unite. They want to get back. how much ever close you get, the distance always remains. How much ever close you get to the other, the distance remains. You can live with the person for 30, 40 years. Still the distance doesn't get bridged. The distance still remains the same. You have lived with the person for 40 years. The intensity of love and affection doesn't increase for 40 years. In fact, at the end of the 40th year, it is ulta direction also. So, what is yoga? Yoga is the longing for union, because the separation is causing pain. Separation means the distance. The distance is causing pain. That's why they always want to be together, because separation is painful. That longing is what is called as yoga. The person who has this longing, what practices he does? At the level of the mind, there is equanimity. At the level of the action, there is an rejoice. There is an enjoyment in action. That's how he said, Samatvam yoga uchyate and yoga karmasu kausalam. He is practicing yoga. How do you understand? What is the description of the man who is practicing yoga? These two. When these two are practiced, he is united to knowledge, which is where we left last week, 51. He is united to knowledge. There are two kinds of knowledge. There are two kinds of knowledge. One type of knowledge is knowing objectively. Another kind of knowledge is the knower himself is understood. There are two kinds of knowledge, the knower and the known. When the focus is on the known, it is objective knowledge. When the focus is on the knower, it is subjective knowledge. So united to knowledge, united to this Sankhya Yoga, united to this highest knowledge. What is this highest knowledge means? The focus, the attention is upon knowing the knower. All the knowledge, attention is upon known. All knowing is directed towards outside. How do I understand this problem? How do I understand this person? There is one kind of knowledge which is objective by nature, objective knowledge. To understand the two types of knowledges, use these two words, it becomes easy. The knower and the known. The known is object. So all the time, that kind of knowledge is where the attention is upon the known. The known means the object. Even God becomes an object at some point of time. That's why you want to know God. You want to see God. You want to experience God. So God also becomes an object of knowledge. So one kind of knowledge is where it is objective by nature. There is another kind of knowledge where the focus, the attention is on the knower, which is the subject. here he says, the wise one, united to knowledge, he is liberated from the birth of bond and the bond of birth. Indeed, reach the state beyond evil. United to knowledge. What kind of knowledge he is united to? As a result of which he has become wise. He is united to the subjective knowledge. For knowing anything objectively will never give you a clarity of anything. Again I repeat. Knowing, you know my name, you know my address, you know my father's name, you know my mother's name, you know my qualifications, you know everything. All this knowing is not knowing me. So, objective knowledge is never a complete knowledge. Objective knowledge is never complete. Objective knowledge is always presumptions and assumptions. There is no authenticity in that knowledge. The subjective knowledge, when the subject itself is understood. That's what Ramana keeps saying, who am I? Where the query, the focus is on understanding the knower. So there are two kinds of knowledges. One is objective knowledge and the subjective knowledge. Objective knowledge is about the objects and beings outside of you. And how much ever you penetrate, you can never completely know. Number one. Number two, the superficial knowing itself will be very satisfying. You will say, I have, அவரை பற்றி கரெக்டாக I have understood. அவர் உங்களை பற்றி கரெக்டாக புரிஞ்சிடுது சார். இல்லையா? நீங்கள் சொன்னதே திருப்பி சொல்லலாம். You will be repeating the same thing. I understood you very correctly. The superficial knowing itself brings a lethargy, brings a satisfaction, and that satisfaction is lethargic. That satisfaction brings a kind of lethargy. Here it's a different kind of knowledge. What is it? Known as subjective knowledge. That's why the Sanskrit word jnanam, and then there is another word vijnanam. It's prefixed with the word vi. When it is prefixed with the word vi, it's a special knowledge. There is one thing called jnanam, knowledge, and then there is another thing called vi plus. What is that vi? It's special. What is the speciality between all other knowledges and this knowledge? All other knowledges are focused on the object. This is the knowledge where it is focused on the subject. Who's the knower? Who's the real knower? So the attention is on the knower. All other knowledges, the attention is on the object, which is very limited by nature. You follow? Limited by nature in the sense it can never be understood. It can never be understood completely. And everyone wants to have a complete understanding with relation to objective knowledge. That is impossible. For you can never know anything objectively complete. It's not possible. Subjective knowledge, it's different. When the subject is known, at the core, when the subject is understood at the core, everything becomes known. That's why he says, I am all knower. The enlightenment, the description of an enlightened person is he is all knowing. And we think all knowing means objective knowledge. Not that objective knowledge. It is the subjective knowledge where the attention, the focus is on the knower. Knower means the subject. That's the distinction. Jnanam and Vijnanam. Objective knowledge and subjective knowledge. Yesterday that person asked me, sir, objective knowledge, subjective knowledge, what is the Sanskrit word? I said Jnanam and Vijnanam. But Vijnanam na science illa, sir. I said, say that you don't know Sanskrit, I said. Don't say it is science. Don't say it is scientific knowledge. Say that you don't know. Jnanam is knowledge. V means special. It doesn't mean science. V means special. Just because repeatedly you have heard 100 times Vijnanam, Vijnanam is science, you think Vijnanam means science. V plus Jnanam, special. So, special means there is something fundamentally different in this knowledge which is not there in all other knowledges. So, all other knowledges are grouped in one category. This knowledge is grouped in another category. What is this? The knower is understood. That person is what he means as the wise, united to knowledge. What is the union with knowledge? He has understood the focus has shifted from the object to the subject. Again I repeat. The focus, the attention has shifted from the object to the subject. Otherwise, the attention is always on the attention is all the time upon the object only, never the subject. The most impossible thing is to bring this shift from the object to the subject. The most, when I say impossible, it's almost difficult, very difficult. It's not that it's absolutely not impossible. It's very difficult is to shift the focus from the object to the subject. Why it is so difficult is because of this fallacy in thinking. The world triggers something. Because the triggering point is the world outside, the entire attention goes outside. Carefully follow, I'll explain. It becomes easy to. The triggering point is from the outside, so the entire attention is on the outside. If that person didn't say that, I would not have gotten angry, sir. I got angry because that person said something. That too about you, they said. They say something about me, I should get angry. Why should you get angry? You follow? That since it starts from there, the entire attention goes outside. Not realizing that it is not happening because of the outside. It is happening because you have something inside. That is the knowledge, where the focus has shifted from the object to the subject. It's ரொம்ப confusing. If this is too confusing, I will give some stories, some examples. It becomes easy. Yeah. Nowadays the remark that I get is, your stories are very good, sir. Get a clarity in thinking. There are two kinds of thinking: cause and effect, conducive environment. One is cause and effect. Another is conducive environment. Poor thinking is where the conducive environment is blamed as the cause. The conducive environment is misunderstood as the cause. That's why it's called Vijnana, special kind of knowledge. Mango seed is the cause, mango tree is the effect. Soil is conducive environment. Are you able to understand? It's a conducive environment for the seed to become a tree. Soil is not the cause. It is the seed that is the cause. But you need lot of clarity to understand that. You will think it is the soil that is the cause. During the summer times, it's so hot, the whole place is brown. The first rains, the whole thing turns green. The whole thing turns green. Rain is the conducive environment. It's not the rain that brought the greenery. If rain can bring the greenery, catch rain in a bottle and keep, it will remain it is conducive. But upon very superficial layer of perception, it looks like it is the cause. Able to follow? In seed and tree, in rain and greenery, it's easy to understand. So, first step is to understand that there are two things: cause and effect versus conducive environment. The world is a conducive environment. The cause is inside of you. World doesn't cause anything. World is a conducive environment to bring out what you have already inside of you. The seed of attachment and possessiveness is what you have inside of you. The world acts like a rain, bringing it out. So you can't blame are you able to follow? The seed of attachment and possessiveness is what you have already. So wherever you go, you'll get attached to. You'll get attached to something or the other. So because the seed of attachment is in you. The seed of anger is in you. The seed of greed is in you. The seed of jealousy is in you. World is a conducive environment that brings it out. Very poor thinking is conducive environment is seen as the cause of it, and all attempt is made to change the conducive environment. If that environment is changed, everything will be alright. That is objective knowledge. Subjective knowledge says, understand it correctly. Understand the cause and effect correctly. That's what it means. The wise united to knowledge. What is union with knowledge? United to knowledge, degree holders, PhDs. We are all united to knowledge already. For we know so much. But then there is no knowledge, there is no thinking, there is no clarity at all. There is no knowledge because there is no clarity. Why no clarity? Because there is no thinking. Or it's very poor thinking. What is poor thinking? Conducive environment is seen as the cause. If only you can segregate the two, the attention will shift from the object to the subject. Otherwise, the entire focus is all the time upon object only. That's why the self-knowledge, that who am I and all doesn't. We don't know what, how much ever you hear, who am I, it's very difficult to understand what is this. Who am I thing now? Don't know. Something is so mystical in that, sir. You are not able to understand that. What is that? The seed of anger is what you have in you already. The remark brings it out. Carefully follow. The seed of anger is what you have in you already. The remark brings it out. But then, as long as that remark is not made, it looks like yes, it looks like you are holy. That those things doesn't exist at all in you. Not only, sir, it didn't exist in me, It's all because of that person only. United to knowledge, the shift is from the object to the subject. Object, you understand it as a conducive environment. Subject, you have to understand it as cause and effect. That's why Vedanta says, leave the world aside, go inside. When it is said like that, you hear it as, oh, Vedanta is promoting selfishness. Don't bother about the world at all. Bother about your own welfare. If everyone is bothered about only themselves, everything will be alright. But then everyone is so bothered about others except themselves. Everyone is so bothered about the knowing outside. That knowing can never happen. That's why, how much ever you know, the distance the gap is still there. The distance is always there. And you always ask, something is missing. How to bridge? You have to bridge that gap. Leave the object and get into the subject. He is the wise man, he is saying. All that he is saying is he is a wise man. He has got united with knowledge. Two kinds of knowledge, objective and subjective. The focus, you leave the focus from the known and shift the focus to the knower. That's why if you look at all your investigations, if you look at all your questions, if you look at anything that you do, the movement is always towards the outside, the object. All the query, all the questions will be about knowing something outside. And how much ever you know the outside, you can never fully know. For in the deepest core you know that you have not, that you don't know anything. And then there is a different kind of knowledge, which is the subjective knowledge. I just gave this distinction, cause and effect, conducive environment, as that is not the only way. This is one of the ways by which the shift from the object to the subject can happen. The seed of anger is not there in you, the conducive environment will not bring about the anger. That's why that person caused angry, the master turns around and says, don't blame the others. You will get very irritated. You will say, oh, why are you supporting him? Oh, you are only the wire. Who is supporting him? The conducive environment, your thinking is wrong. The conducive environment, you are seeing it as the cause, and you want to change that. So how much ever it is changed, it will remain the same. For the seed is in you. The wise one have understood this. Having understood this, the wise one, liberated from the bond of birth, renouncing the fruit of action, all this you can hear a million times. Still you will have the same problem. If you have renounced the fruit of action, then how can I act, sir? For all actions has the fruit. All actions has the fruit. If not for the fruit, there is no action possible. So you always have doubt about the very fundamentals of Krishna. The very fundamentals of Krishna is what? Renounce the fruit and act. Okay, some other advice. Renounce the desire itself and act. Oh, the first advice is better, because if you have renounced the desire itself, how can you How can you act? For no action is possible without a no action is possible without a desire. So he is saying renouncing the fruit of action, renouncing the fruit of action, renouncing the fruit of action. Not only now, the next 4 chapters you are going to hear only renounce the fruit of action, renounce the fruit of action. But it's so boring to listen to the same thing, say something different. He will say renounce the desire itself. So you are going to alternatively go only between the two. And so difficult is to understand what is renouncing the fruit of action. Liberated from the bond of birth. People are so concerned about death. And what happens after death? You are born and you don't know anything about your birth. And the human being is so concerned about death and what will happen after death, sir. That's why he is not talking about death, the bond of birth. See, the most important event in your life is your birth. And that birth happened unconsciously. Correct? So what is the most important event in your life? I got married. That day I got married. That day I found my dream job. What is the most important event in your life? The most important event in your life. All the other things became possible because of that primary event. What? The birth. And you don't remember? Can you remember anything about your birth? Even if they take a video and show you, you will see it as the birth of somebody else, not as. Investigate that. Don't worry about death and what will happen. Oh, that person is dead. Where he will go, what he will do, what he will have for breakfast, lunch and dinner. You follow? Each and every word that he uses, it's Sankhya Yoga. It's called the yoga of knowledge. Each and every word is so meaningful. One word you can do one class, and chapter 2 will never get over. He's still alive. Nothing happened. That's why you should always put the chairs that have the arms, so that at least some weight is distributed. So on the chair illaya anga romba. I said, who put those chairs? You only put. Maybe you should fall, I think, one day. Then you will remember to put all the chairs correctly. You are so concerned about death and what will happen? What will happen after death? He is saying liberated from the bond of birth. Why birth? If you investigate, you don't know anything about your birth. The significant event of your life, birth, the significant event of your life, death, both happens unconsciously. You will not know. And in between, something is happening and you think, most two important events of your life happens unconsciously. Correct? See, that is subjective knowledge. Then the attention comes to the subject. Now the focus is on the objective knowledge. The wise one is united to the real knowledge. What is the real knowledge? The real knowledge where the focus is on the subject. Indeed, reach the state beyond evil. He reaches that state beyond evil. Evil means vasanas. In philosophical language, evil means vasanas, because it is the vasanas that creates agitations. Anything that creates agitation is evil. Before the class starts 7:30 working, we are very happy, sir. At 8:45 we are very agitated. Anything that causes agitation is evil. What is it that causes agitations? The vasanas, the desires. How vasanas, desires cause agitation? How vasanas cause agitation? Desires means contradiction, conflict. Desires means contradiction. Desires means conflict. Contradiction means, conflict means, desire always keeps you in that confused state. Not knowing what to choose, not knowing what to choose and what to say no to. Are you able to understand? Vasanas means, desires means, how desires causes agitations. Desires means, என்ன சொன்ன? Conflict. அப்புறம் மறந்துட்டேன். Desires means conflict. Desires means contradiction. So, as long as you are caught up in that desire, that eternal confusion will be there. And this causes agitation. Because when you are choosing one, you are not choosing one. You are saying no to the something else. Are you able to follow? That's how desires eventually brings agitations. Because desires means you are choosing one. Now, that's only half side of the story. The other side of the story you don't know. For saying yes to that, you are saying no to something else. That which you have said no to comes back and haunts you. Why? Because you say yes to something in the hope of happiness. You say yes to something in the hope of happiness. You don't get happiness there. There you feel, that's the way we said. You should have taken the other. You follow? It's as simple as that. As long as you are caught up in desires, you will be, the seed for agitation is there all the time. Because desires means conflict. What is the conflict? You have to say yes to something. In order to say yes to something, you necessarily have to say no to something else. Now, investigate. On what basis that you say yes to something? On what basis you say no to something else? When you say yes to something, there is a hope of happiness in that. When you say no to something, same. As no solta, I will be happy, no sir. So, you say yes, you say no, and you keep shifting. You keep shifting. You keep oscillating. Yoga is practicing equanimity, he said. Equilibrium. That oscillation has stopped. Are you able to understand now? Previous verse he said, not previous verse, 48 he said, yoga means equanimity, where the conflict has stopped. What is the conflict? Constantly having to choose. Choose means you have to say yes to something and no to something else. Yes to the class and no to something else, or no to the class and yes to. So whatsoever you do, the yes or no is of no consequence. The end result is agitation. That's why in one word he says, vasanas, desires are evil by nature. Evil na bad desires are, sir. Immoral desires, agitations. So desires by nature keeps the seed for agitations alive and just keeps erupting. It just keeps manifesting. The wise one here has reached the state beyond evil. Beyond evil means no desires. For understand desires like this. Desires means conflicting, contradictory. The wise one have left the conflict behind, has left the contradictions behind, and the intellect is fixed in one. The mind is many, the intellect is fixed in one. That intellect getting fixed in one is the starting point of liberation, samadhi. The next two verses is going to talk about it. 52 and 53. Now he has moved from the conflicts and the contradictions, and the shift is happening towards from the conflict, from the opposites, it's moving towards one. You can't have a desire for that one, because desire implies conflict. Desire implies conflict. So that one is not a desire. If you read the verses 52 and 53, you will understand what he is saying. First he says, he's left it behind. How he left it behind? First thing is, he left the world behind. How he left the world behind? He has understood. World is not to be blamed, because it is a conducive environment only. The seed is in you. The seed of attachment is in you. The conducive environment brings it out. The seed is there already. Soil, the conducive environment brings it out. It's wrong logic to blame the conducive environment as the cause. So if you have understood this distinction, the world will be seen as a conducive environment, and you will stop blaming the world. Attention will shift from the world to the subject. And then when you come inside of you, you understand what? Inside of you, it's only a bundle of contradictions. What is inside of you? Desires. And what is the desires means? Conflicting and contradictions. So you leave that also behind. Having left that also behind, what are you doing? What is the seeker doing? Where is he? What is he focused upon? What is he going to do? Verses 52 and 53. First 52 padi.
Yada te moha kalidam buddhiryati tarishyati tada brahmasi vedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha yada te moha kalidam buddhiryati tarishyati tada brahmasi vedam.
When your intellect will cross the mire of delusion, then you will grow indifferent to what has been heard and what is yet to be heard. (52 and 53) is the most noted verses of the Bhagavad Gita. How you understand this verse shows how much you have evolved as just scholarly interpretation. All that he is saying is what? When your intellect will cross the mire of delusion, then you will grow indifferent to what has been heard and what is yet to be heard. As what has been heard and what is yet to be heard will come later. You will grow indifferent. First thing is, indifference comes in. Actually, the English word indifference has a very negative connotation. Almost like a tamasic thing it is. Actually, the indifference here is not the tamasic indifference. It is renunciation. To understand that, you need to understand the stages of spiritual evolution. How you evolve, how the seed to sapling to the tree. Stages. The seed to the sapling to the tree. What are the stages? Stage number 1 is a person too many desires. Too many desires means correct. Too many conflicts, too many contradictions. Too many conflicts, too many contradictions. For a person who is completely caught up in the too many conflicts and too many contradictions, direction, Karma Yoga. When you do Karma Yoga, the conflicts and contradictions are all focused for a higher purpose. So, first lesson you are taught is Karma Yoga. What is taught in Karma Yoga? The conflicts and contradictions, leave it behind and focus on higher. That one. That's why Karma Yoga starts with the higher idea. You follow? So in the initial stages, the man is full of desires. For that man who is full of desires, straightaway self-realization, God realization, all is okay. But it doesn't really help that person into anything. So first thing that is told to him is, do Karma Yoga. When Karma Yoga is done, the bulk of desires, the bulk of vasanas is reduced. How it is reduced? Desires are caused, desires are maintained by you constantly thinking about it. If you stop thinking about it, desires disappears. So in Karma Yoga, what are you doing? You are so focused on the higher, you have no time to think about the lower, as a result of which the lower drops. That's how Karma Yoga reduces the bulk of desires. For how Karma Yoga reduces the bulk of desires, now you need to understand the mechanism of desire. The desires are caused, the desires are maintained by you constantly thinking about it. You just go over it again and again and again. You come to 62 and 63, he is going to explain this. See, now it is only, he is just saying it as a rule he is saying. 62, 63 of the same chapter, he is going to explain it in detail. Step by step he is going to explain. How desires are created by you thinking about it. How desires are maintained by you constantly thinking about it. The tragedy is, you think about it and it makes you unconscious. You will not know that you are thinking about it. That unconscious thinking. You are thinking and you don't know that you are thinking. That's how desire. Thinking, you just open your eyes and just think what thinking, everything becomes standstill. Seems to be nothing is there. But then what happens? Third second, fifth second, it starts manifesting and you are carried away by it. What is carried away? Your awareness is carried away. Your consciousness is carried. So desires are caused, created maintained by you thinking about it. Now, what is implied here within brackets? Unconscious. You are thinking about it and you don't know that you are thinking about it. That's why, no sir, I didn't do anything, because you are aware of only of the superficial layer in you. Desires, the unconscious is exactly like this. You have the garage, you have the loft, all the useless is dumped there. You have the garage or you have a loft. That's why I always dream of a house where there is no loft at all. For you can't put, not only you will put something there, you will close it also. And that closed thing looks neat and clean. That is that unconscious. That loft and garage is the unconscious. Oh no, don't go into the garage, because it is very, you follow? Your living room is so neat, so tidy, and you are so carried away by the living room. That is the conscious. The conscious is the living room, the unconscious is your loft and garage. I am just giving it as I don't know what example to give, I am just saying something randomly. Karma Yoga reduces the bulk of desires. How it reduces the bulk of desires? You are all the time thinking about the higher goal, as a result of which you have no time to associate with the lower. Think of the lower. Since you have stopped thinking about the lower, desires drops. Stage number 1, Karma Yoga. With the reduction of desires, now assume the person has done. Now in 2 minutes we all have done Karma Yoga and reached the state. Assume that theoretically. Correct. You all have done Karma Yoga and reached that state now. Now what is the stage number 2? A disinterest in the world will develop. That state is what is called as renunciation. You are no more interested in the world. A dispassion towards the objects and beings of the world. A dispassion develops. You are no more interested in it. A sense of renunciation. An introverted stage. This is the second stage of spiritual evolution. This is the second stage. From the seed to the sapling. From the sapling to the tree. The stages of evolution. What is the second stage? The mind withdrawn from the preoccupations of the world. It's no more running in the world. No more interested in the world. You have developed a disinterest in the world. And all your interest is upon the self. Renunciation. The most wonderful state of spiritual development is renunciation. From the external world to the internal. From extrovert to introvert. This is the second stage. The third stage is what we can dream of now. One day we can aspire to reach that third stage. The third stage of meditation. The third stage of meditation. The third and final stage, it is meditation. Now he is talking about stage number 2 here. Stage number 3 is the next verse. So, he has prepared you through knowledge and Karma Yoga and wisdom, and you have come to stage number 2. What is stage number 2? a renunciation, a dispassion. This renunciation, this dispassion is misunderstood as indifference. This renunciation, this dispassion is misunderstood as indifference. That's why the Sanskrit word, literally in English you have to translate it as indifference only. But actually it's not indifference, it is renunciation, a dispassion. You are no more interested in the affairs of the world. And the people will look at you and say, Vedanta you will turn selfish now. You have become more selfish. Where you are no more interested in the affairs of the world. It's a stage of evolution. What is the stage? From the Karma Yoga, the evolution to the stage of dispassion. In that dispassion, what has been heard, you have developed a dispassion to what has been heard. All your past experiences, the desire for the world is gone. Dispassion for what is yet to be heard means the same dispassion for the desire for God also is there. He is not desire stricken for God. Are you able to follow? He is saying, what is yet to be heard? What is this man yet to hear? What is this man going to experience? The experience of self-realization, God realization. Even for that, he is, for desire brings in agitations. For desire brings in agitation. But desire for self-realization will make me happy? No, sir. It will not make you happy. It will also keep you in the same agitated state only. So having understood desire in the true sense, he has become dispassionate to what he has heard. What is yet to hear? Yet to hear, na? Yet to hear means the experience of the desire for liberation itself, moksha itself. This state of dispassion is an essential prerequisite for plunging into meditation. This dispassion is essential for plunging into meditation. With desire you can't plunge into meditation. With desire, if you plunge into meditation, every 2 minutes you will check. Did I realize? Oh, why? Half an hour I'd say, why realization didn't happen? Because desire does that. So, when you plunge into meditation, that qualification is essential. What is that qualification? A sense of dispassion with relationship to liberation itself. In the stage like that, don't say that. We all have reached that stage, sir. We are totally disinterested in self-realization. At your level, develop a longing for self-realization. But in these context of these two verses, theoretically assume that you are in that stage. They keep talking about hearing. They are all called Shruti. The highest experience is called Shruti. Shruti means that which is heard. Why it is heard? It implies that it's not the product of ego's effort. That which is there already, he experiences it. This is what I explained in the last class, in the sequence to understand that. Self-realization is not an attainment. That's why they call it as it's heard. It's heard. Shruti. Shruti means that which is heard. In fact, all holy textbooks of all religions, they say it is revealed text. The Old Testament is was revealed to Moses. Moses didn't. Right? It's revealed. Here, all the Upanishads, everything, the name itself is called as, we have kept the name as Shruti. Mantra drashtas, not mantra kartas. They are the seers, the hearers, not the doers. Are you able to follow? The commandments was revealed to Moses. The Bible was revealed to, the Quran was revealed to Muhammad. The voice is always the voice. The voice means, don't start hallucinating. No voice you are going to, there's no voice that you are going to hear like that. If you are hearing voices now, that is hallucination, not that state. I will remember in that that Pondicherry University, when I was talking to that group of students of psychology, see the psychiatrist, psychologist, if you go and say, I am hearing now, they will start treating you because there is something wrong with you. That's why you are hearing. I am hearing voices now. They will not say, oh, what a holy man you are. You are following Shruti, they will not say. So I didn't know how to start the conversation with them. I said, what you people treat is what we worship, I started. What you people treat as a disease is what we worship. No, the HOD started sitting. The HOD he said, what are you saying? Not that hearing, that is hallucination. I also heard, sir. I also heard Acharya. No, you are hallucinating. Not that. That indifference. Indifference means an understanding that is not a product of, it's not the product of desire, it's not a product of ego. This understanding is essential to get into meditation. So from the first stage of Karma Yoga, by developing a dispassion, he has entered into the second stage. What is dispassion? Dispassion to both. To what has been heard and what he is going to hear. Heard refers to all the worldly desires. Dispassionate to all the worldly desires. Yet to hear is self-realization. And he has developed a dispassion to that also. This is where we have a difficulty. Sir, adukkum dispassion on how can we then how will we pursue? Go back. Karma Yoga you didn't start. Go back, he says. Are you able to follow? But dispassion to the world is okay, sir. But dispassion to self-realization, then what will motivate that man to pursue self-realization? No, don't worry. Go back and start doing Karma Yoga. He has no time to start all over the discussion. Again, dispassionate to what has been heard and what is to be heard. What is to be heard? Other 53. Pardon.
Shruti Pratipannate Yada Sasyati Nishtala Samadhavachala Buddhi Sada Yogamavapyasi Shruti Pratipannate Yada Sasyati Nishtala Samadhavachala Buddhi Sada Yogamavapyasi.
When your intellect, perplexed by what has been heard, shall stand immovable and steady in meditation, then you will attain yoga. Yoga means self-realization. This verse depicts the drama of self-realization. previous verse yet to hear. That which is yet to hear in the previous verse becomes heard now. That's how we have to that's how in the sequence we have to understand it. In the previous verse he said that which is heard, and then there is something which you are yet to hear. In this verse, that which is yet to hear in the previous verse is heard already. In that hearing, what happens? Intellect, perplexed by what has been heard, stands achala, becomes immovable. Stands immovable. All movement comes to the end. All movement stops. What is the movement of the mind? What is the movement of the mind? Between desires, correct. Bada. Harke sir. Nigran is listening. What the movement of the mind means? The movement between desires. The movement of the mind is caused by desires. Intellect perplexed. Why he uses the word intellect? Why intellect is used? Because it is the intellect that is so close to that experience. Even the intellect is not experiencing it, but then it's so close in the hierarchy of human equipment. The intellect, which is the subtlest, is so close to that. So it gets a glimpse of it before it can understand what has happened. Intellect is dissolved. That is the perplexing state. It's perplexed. It's gone. That's why it's a drama of realization. As far as these two verses are concerned, simply swallow it. Don't make it a logical. Don't try and make logic out of all that. All that he is saying is, the experienced person is saying what happens at the point of realization. Just listen to it and just leave it at that. Don't try to exactly, sir, but then intellect na mind na, don't get into all the semantics and logic here. Simply, this is the drama of, that is called the drama of realization. And we will not spend much time on this. Quickly we will finish and go also. It's a wonderful verse where a man is trying to explain what he has experienced. He has experienced it and he is desperately trying to explain that. So beyond the point it looks very difficult to comprehend. Now he is explaining it, but then we cannot comprehend. For our capacity to comprehend is only this much. Ananda, the chief disciple, told Buddha, you are partial. He said, you are partial. Buddha turned and said, what? Why are you saying I am partial? You give more to some and you give less to some. You are very partial. Buddha said, I give equally. According to the patram they have, they receive, he said. I give equally. According to the patram, they receive. If you bring a teaspoon, you will take according to the teaspoon. If you bring a glass, you will take according to the glass. If you bring a bucket, you will bring bucket. For a 12,000 liters tank, you will take accordingly. If you are wise, you will jump into it. Wise will not carry, he will simply jump into it. You follow? So, desperately he trying to explain that state, which is very difficult to comprehend, because our comprehension, the capacity to receive is whatever our I am not saying less or more. It is our capacity is not sufficient to receive this drama of realization. You can understand renunciation and all you can understand. It's not that you can't understand it. But to receive the drama of realization is slightly. So what do you do? Simply swallow nada. 15 questions will come from this. Don't ask any questions. So many questions will ask questions in nothing comes. What is that? Intellect, perplexed by what has been heard. See, why the perplexion is because that immovable state, that state of samadhi is so ecstasy is not the word. No words can create. Here he is describing it through language. The form of Nataraja tries to explain the same thing through dance. That's why you see Nataraja dancing. He is not just how he is dancing. See Nataraja, no? How he is dancing. The matted locks of him is flying, and it's called Ananda Tandava. The dance of Nataraja is the dance of realization. Matted locks is tapas. Matted locks indicates tapas. And the Nataraja's image, if you see, you will see the hair flow. That it's flowing. And how it is flowing? The matted locks are flying in all directions. Even Michael Jackson can't dance like the way Nataraja. Even Nataraja dances. Even the convulsions that he brings a better what drama of all that they are trying to depict is to explain that state. What is happening exactly at that point of realization? It's so difficult to explain. The intellect experiencing that becomes perplexed. The intellect experiencing that becomes. Now here we are trying to learn it through another man's experience. It's a very poor way of learning. You can't learn anything through the experience of another. Drama of realization also don't try to learn through the experience of another. He is explaining his experience. No, that I ate that day. How tasty it was. Now, unless you have tasted that, you will not salivate. As I am talking, I might salivate because. You follow what I am saying? So, he is explaining his experience. What is that experience? Intellect, perplexed by what has been heard, meaning that silence has happened. Silence has, all the effort that we do is to get into that silence. What is deep sleep? What is the state of deep sleep? Nothing. It's all, everything comes to everything disappears. For all practical purposes, nothing exists. Now, deep sleep is not the state of realization. Oh, correct, sir. Oh, correct. No. That's not a state of realization. Permanently we can get into that state. When you take drugs, you get to that state of the thought ceases to exist. All intoxicants, what it does? It takes you to that point. So people try taking drugs thinking that is giving them spiritual height, spiritual height alland. Even what you have is also drained out. Intellect perplexed by what has been heard. For the first time in its existence, it has come closer to that silence, not the silence of nothingness, that silence of, if at all you can call a silence of everything, I don't know. You can simply say whatever word you want to use, you can use. First time it is experiencing that, and that experience is so wonderful, it turns perplexed. Wonderment stands in that wonderment. All in past tense. All in past tense because it has already resolved. Technically speaking, mind is the flow of thought. Intellect is that which distinguishes in that flow. Understand it technically. Mind is the flow of thought. Intellect is that which distinguishes in that flow. In meditation, what is happening is the flow of thought stops. When the flow of thought stops, the mind stops. Since there is nothing to distinguish, the intellect also stops. So the last thing to go is the intellect, because the mind goes first. Since there is nothing to distinguish, the intellect also. That's why he says, intellect is perplexed. What is the last distinction? The distinction of sound and silence. What they call as matra, amatra. Sound, silence. Sound, silence. That matra and amatra is mantra. So the mantra has two things. The sound part of the mantra and the silent part of the mantra. So mantra means we think only sound. No, so we shout so. It has two parts. The sound part and the silent part. The matra and the amatra. It is the flow between matra and amatra. The flow between sound and silence. The mind, it flows from sound to silence. A chant, a period of silence. The next chant, the period of silence. The next chant is the flow of, not which is the mind, meditation. What is intellect? Intellect is distinguishing between the two. What is the two? It understands there is the sound, there is the silence. There is the sound, there is the silence. That's why in meditation they choose a sound which doesn't have any association. Om doesn't have any association. Ramana. You'll be irritated or you'll be reminded of the neighbor Rama. That's why they choose a sound which will not produce any association. What sound will not produce any association? The basic sounds. What is the basic sounds? A, U, The basic sound of A, U, A, U, A, U, coalesce into Om. It will not produce any, for the distinction must happen between only sound and silence, nothing else. Sound, silence, sound, silence, sound, silence. A period of time comes where the flow stops. Mind is extinct. When the mind is extinct, intellect is perplexed because for there is nothing to distinguish. Particular intellect is also gone. You will attain yoga, self-realization. You have attained the state of self-realization. This is known as the drama of self-realization. He says, this man has attained the state of samadhi, the state of self-realization. Now Arjuna is going to start. What is the description of the enlightened man? After enlightenment, what will he have for breakfast, lunch and dinner? He says that man has attained enlightenment. It's over. The next verse, Arjuna starts. Adu apprama, adu romba naal kalichi we will start. After I come back. He says, this man has attained the state of self-realization. So, we all have attained. Correct, so happy, no? We all have attained self-realization. Intellect has attained the state of perplexion. Mind is no more. The yoga has happened. When your intellect, perplexed by what has been heard, shall stand immovable and steady in meditation, then you will attain self-realization. From verses 11 to 53 is one set. Where he started and where he concluded. Sankhya Yoga, the complete knowledge. Complete knowledge is given. So remember that it's called Sankhya Yoga, the yoga of knowledge. And this is the highest, he says. Throughout the Gita he goes on saying, what I told you in the beginning is the highest. What I told you in the beginning is highest. From chapter 3, it will be a further explanation of, it will be going to be a further and further reiteration and saying the same thing of what is being said from 11 to 53. The Sankhya Yoga, the yoga of knowledge. Arjuna, listening so carefully, so impressed, so inspired. He wants to know the description of the enlightened man. Samadhistasya Keshava. He is going to ask that. That's another fascinating portion. The description of an enlightened person. We'll come to that later. Sequence is 11 to 53 is one set, where he starts by talking about the world, talks about the self, the path, renunciation, self-realization, yoga of knowledge. Having explained all this, he is taking a break. Having explained all this, he is taking a break. Arjuna will interfere with the question. When we will start with that Arjuna's question, will be told in the WhatsApp group. Will be told in the WhatsApp group. Next few sessions, there will be discussion group. Decide. நிறைய பேர் குரூப் டிஸ்கஷனுக்கு வரலன்னாக்கா you can no point in simply come and sit and